Good morning again, everyone. We're just about a minute away from this exciting and very informative Buildings New York Unlocked seminar, Growing Rental Income and Lowering Tenant Turnover, brought to you by Notifii. Notifii Track is your package logging and tracking solution. You can log packages in and out in seconds with the help of Notifii Track. Notifii Track is a management software that will literally enable you to spend 75% less time in package logging just by snapping a photo on your phone or tablet. You'll learn more today, but please join us in going to our sponsor's website at notifii.com, notifii.com. We'll begin in just a minute. All right, well, welcome. April 12th. This is our first Buildings New York Unlocked seminar for 2022. Welcome back, everyone. For those of you that are joining us for the first time, this is the first of a series of webinars that are designed to help you as the building owner increase your revenues and make compliance easy and really managing your business complex free to the most that we can. Today, we're excited to have Sneha Lakkaraju join us. She is the marketing director for Notifii Track, and she's going to take you through some incredible insights that will enable you to grow rental income and lower tenant turnover. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sneha and take you through today's webinar. And by the way, feel free at any time. We want to make this interactive. Simply go down and either raise a hand or put something in the chat. We'll bring you up so we can make this an interactive dialogue. And with that, I'll leave it over to Sneha. Sneha?
Thanks, Ed. We're really excited to be here and kick off Buildings NY Unlocked for 2022. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. As Ed mentioned, my name is Sneha Lakkaraju. I'm the marketing director over at Notifii, and that's really enabled me to work with both commercial and residential real estate businesses for the last 2 years. And for the past 8 years, I've been helping businesses of all kinds build their external marketing strategies for prospecting, as well as really hone in on their current customer base and make sure you get every dollar out of it, which ties in very well with today's presentation. So at the end of the day, lowering our tenant turnover does increase our overall rental income and decrease our costs. Let's start by the numbers. A lot of property managers, both commercial and residential, feel very confident that they engage their tenants appropriately, about 84%, but only 23% of their tenants or residents actually agree with this. What this signifies is there might be a little bit of a misunderstanding. We may not be meeting people where they want to be met. And we could be supporting current residents, current tenants, a little bit differently and meeting them where their priorities are. 66% of consumers stop doing business with a brand due to poor customer service. That's pretty indicative of pretty much stopping at that purchase phase of the sales cycle. We've closed the deal and then walk away. We've at least locked them in for a year lease or longer at that point. But really, it's important to take a closer look at these two last phases, service and loyalty, in order to boost our business overall. When we take a look at service and loyalty, really determines retention rate And that retention rate helps you avoid expensive costs of turnover, needing to repair any damages to the space, the marketing spend that goes behind renting out a unit. Your word of mouth volume increases as well. So your online presence, especially when it comes to brand equity, reviews are so important. If you already have mastered that loyalty and service aspect, it'll be much easier to build that area, and you'll be able to spend significantly less online to get those good reviews. And a lot of different properties do have such a strong word of mouth volume that the marketing effort can be relatively minimal because they have such a strong brand presence in their area. With that in mind, how exactly do we address those two parts of the sales cycle when we're talking about loyalty and service? And it's really focusing in on these priorities. And we've looked at a couple different data sources to show what the priorities are for tenants in 2022, along with a good paradigm to follow moving forward. And at the core of everything, if you walk away with just one thing from today, is that your engaged tenant is the one that renews. So the three main things we're looking at: amenities, engagement/service, and modernization. So on the topic of amenities, what services are unique to your facility? Engagement and services, how responsive or helpful are you to your on-site and remote teams? And when it comes to modernization, is your facility built to modern standards? Do they get modern benefits? And we'll talk through these one by one and take a pause to hear a little bit about your existing efforts. What are you currently doing at your facility or your building to address these sorts of things? How are you communicating them? We encourage everyone to go ahead and participate in the discussion, and we'll be happy to provide any feedback if you have any questions as well. When we talk about amenities, we want to set the tone for tenants in your facility with your amenities. These are convenient services and features that not only serve any businesses that occupy the area or families that occupy the area, but their employees as well. And when we're talking about selling aspects, a lot of times amenities can be these sexy features that sell your property. Some very popular amenities over the last 2 years, especially now, even now that we're stepping a little bit out of the COVID era. High-speed internet is crucial. With hybrid working, people working from home, people working from the office, there's an absolute need for connectivity. So that is an absolute priority, especially in highly densely populated areas like New York City. Inbound package management, that's where we come in. That is due to a long-term trend. Actually, since 2015, e-commerce has been such a big boom that not only personal packages are being sent to people's homes, it's also being sent into their offices. And from the business perspective, a lot more deliveries are being made in bulk times. So we want to make sure that everything that comes in goes out in a timely manner. Things like fitness centers, conference rooms, lounges, guest check-in, the sorts of amenities that create purpose and flow to the space make it seem a lot more organized and add a lot of value. With that being said, what amenities have you been asked about by prospects? And then how do you handle any requests or inquiries on amenities that come from your existing tenants? Let's open it up to the group. You can raise your hand.
Feel free, everyone, to just jump in, raise a hand, or we can even bring you up on stage and let you chat with us. Don't be shy. Anyone? Okay, and if you do have a question and you'd like to just maybe put it in the Q&A, you could also go down to the Q&A section and drop it in there.
All righty. So I'll give you a good example of this since we don't have too many people sharing right now. There is one property that we've worked with, a residential property based out of, I believe, Ohio. And they, for the longest time, used paper flyers to send out updates about different events and things that they were doing, and didn't really allow for any back and forth with their residents. But they consistently held these events. And eventually it became known that really a lot of their tenants didn't necessarily want to attend community events, but they wanted to use community amenities for their own events and lock them down and book them. And for this particular community, they had no system to do so. If it wasn't for running into a particular resident while putting the flyer on their front door, they wouldn't have known. They actually signed up for our Notifii Connect service, which is a text and email platform to communicate with residents. And that allowed them to be able to text in when they wanted reservations, and then the staff would close down that particular area to be open for resident events. That's a really good segue into engagement. How you communicate with your tenants is a huge factor into how your tenants view the quality of your management. While the facility may be spick and span and maintained, you might have a couple really great amenities within the space. Not being responsive or not having open line of communication can often be misconstrued for mismanagement. Finding the right medium to open up a channel of communication with your tenants is important, and finding the right medium to send out messaging to existing tenants versus prospective ones is also crucial here. One thing to consider is that as of late, SMS marketing has gained so much popularity, and this one statistic above my head here is probably the biggest reason why. SMS messages have a 90% open rate, and that's usually done within the first 60 seconds of it being sent. Whereas emails have about 30 to 40% open rate, depending on what industry you're in, and their responses typically take about an hour to receive. So this is much more of a direct response sort of medium. And when you need that answer from your tenants, or you want to ensure they are likely to open this message and be aware, especially if you're pushing a new initiative or you're changing how you'll be collecting payments moving forward, it is critical to find the right type of medium. There are other options as well. Social media is a great option to foster a sense of community. Email is a great option if you're planning to attach lots of files and more documentation sorts of things. And then phone calls, good old phone calls are great when it's very, very critical. You're more likely to get an answer if someone knows that there's an important topic to be discussing with your team. When you're evaluating your communication strategy, whether it be for prospects or for internal existing tenants or residents, you want to ask yourself, how do you respond to your inquiries? So what is the channel of communication that your residents have to get to you, and how are you going to actually respond to them? Is it manual? Do you have autoresponders? Are you sending them an FAQ link? How do you intake maintenance requests? This is the most common issue in any sort of property management. Do you record all of your communication? Is there a record of it that you can reference for the future if there are any issues with any tenants or residents? And what mediums do you use to keep in touch? Outlining those sorts of things can help you identify any gaps in your communication strategy to figure out where the work is. It could also show you opportunities for automation. There could be something very repetitive in this process. If your answers are very similar across the board, why not implement an autoresponder? And then the last thing it'll do is also see where the cost is going into the most. When it comes to communication, a lot of people just focus in on the cost of software or the cost of like a graphic design tool if you use flyers, or the cost of printing. those are not the only costs. You have the labor costs. And when you're managing several tenants, and when you're managing over 100, 200 tenants, you're going to need to keep in mind the cost it goes into having your team answer every single tenant. Any way you can cut that down be a great way to stretch your ROI while engaging your tenants enough to keep them around longer. You want to build the facade that you are a 20,000 person team who can handle any question and is super responsive, even if your team is just too strong. With that in mind, similar question. How are you engaging your tenants now? What is the main way that you like to communicate with them? And how would you like to see that improve?
And everyone, don't be shy. Just simply raise a hand or put something in the Q&A or the chat. We're here for you. We'll give you all a minute. Take advantage of having Sneha here because she's a wealth of knowledge, and we'd also like to hear from you. Anyone want to volunteer?
All right.
Oh, we got one. Yes. Okay, great. So John Marcos. So you have a question about emails, John? Would you like to little expand on that question?
And we've got Paul up with us.
Is there a possible way? What is the best possible way? Is it email? Is it text? Is it telephone? I mean, email is good because of you can record it. You have a record of it, and the same is true of text to a certain degree. But how does the tenant view each means of communication?
That's a fantastic question. So when we talk about phone calls in particular, this is a very important one. With the rise of telemarketing and robocalls, phone calls have the lowest kind of sentiment. It is considered almost harassment to call it. You get a very, very anxious-filled person when you get them on the phone, unless it's something scheduled that you have agreed to prior. Text messages, while those are frequent and becoming more of a marketing tool, are typically very a little more engaging, but still kind of passive, so is considered the ideal. Emails are considered very formal. So if you send a lot of, it's really about the frequency there. If you're sending your tenants 6 or 7 emails a week, that's going to have a negative impact. But if you're sending one very purposeful one each week that has a lot of good information for them, then that is typically viewed positively.
Thank you.
No problem.
And Paul Winter, it looks like you had your hand raised.
My question was just answered.
Oh, got it. Great. That was Paul?
Yes.
Let's take a peek
Great.
in the Q&A. So John, you use emails so that you can keep records. That's awesome. There are the other mediums too, just so you know, do have some really great tools for you to keep records. Most SMS software, including the one that Notifii has some sort of record tool for you to be able to keep track of how you're communicating with different residents or tenants. The only one that's a little tricky is phone call. You can have your phone calls recorded as long as you have that pre-recorded message at the beginning saying that it is going to be recorded, but it's a little more difficult to throw into a spreadsheet or add into a patient, into a resident record. Awesome. Let's add Leah up here.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I want to know how I could save copy or copy the history of the text. I've been texting a tenant, a total tenant actually. How do I save those messages outside of the text app?
Yeah. So unless you use some sort of software, supplemental software, like for instance, Notifii Connect, and unfortunately I don't have too many slides on it, but let me try to go down here. This is our Notifii Connect platform. There are tools like this. A lot of property management software tools have this as well, like Yardi, Rent Manager, and a few others, where it will not only allow you to text off your phone and keep those text messages, but it'll actually save them to a record associated with your tenant. So when you go back and you look at record, you'll have a line by line of every text message you sent them and every text message they sent back. If you don't have a tool like that set up currently, the largest suggestion is to make sure that you're texting them off of a third-party app so you can transfer it to your computer. Or you can actually, if you have an iPhone, download your entire text message conversation, email it to yourself, and then throw it into a spreadsheet for the time being.
How do you download that? You have to copy, or is there a download?
So there's an option in your settings, not to get super tech support. It's a little, I'll send you something after the webinar as well to help it, make it a little easier. It is a little complicated of a process because you need to go to the contact and then the settings and then export the data associated with that contact, and then you can send it to yourself.
Oh, okay. Can you include the software, and preferably a free one that I could use?
So there are a couple. Most of them are paid, but they do include free trials, including ours. I guess the best ones. Do you use any property management software?
No, I don't.
Okay. I'm probably using something like a Google number, or you can SMS through, and then you can also access it from your computer, and it saves your records as long as you have continued Google space on your Google account is your best bet. So you're not necessarily paying for this service. It's not as organized as it would be if you sprung for a software, but at least you'll have a record of it both on your phone and on your computer, and it lasts for as long as you have space on Google.
Okay, last question. There was a long taxes for a long time, so the entire history. Do I usually, if I have to do this, I have to download one by one, or there's a way to just copy what I had?
It's going to have whatever you have currently on your phone. So when you export it out, it's going to be just that chunk. Whereas tools like Notifii Connect will save up to five years, even if you clear it from your app cache. We'll still have as far back as we can go with being compliant with data security laws, which is 5 years.
Okay, so I could copy a file of that to my computer, or I must have your software. I'm only keeping a copy, so do I have to, can I say myself a copy?
Yeah, so if you take the route that I will track down your email after the webinar and send you the instructions on that, you can download your text message history with one particular person and then send it to yourself. You'll just have to keep doing that or to get that report. Or using something like Notifii Connect, you can individually pick, it saves the record for you, and you can export an Excel whenever you'd like, and it'll just keep adding on to your entire history. It just is a lot fewer steps, usually comes a lot more organized, and it also includes the rest of the information about your tenant as well, because we do allow you to fill in records about them. So their lease start date, their lease end date, their lease amount, if you want their birthday. And when you export all that information, it'll have that at the top, along with all of your communication history, both text message and email.
Oh, wonderful. Sounds good. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, no problem. And if anyone is interested, I'll take the moment to plug in demoing either Notifii Track or Notifii Connect. My email will be up at the end of the webinar, but you could also visit us at notifii.com. And there's this cute little orange schedule a demo button up in the top right-hand corner. You can pick a time that works for you, and we'll be able to walk you through the product live with one of our product specialists.
And I think, Sneha, we actually have an additional question in the Q&A. I think you can see that there. How do you, from an anonymous attendee, but and also right before that, John Marcos, it looks like, said, sometimes, thank you for sharing, John. Sometimes we copy and paste text messages and insert them into emails. So that's helpful. Sneha, you want to just take this next one?
Yeah. All right. How do you deal with management company and tenant when tenant complains about an issue after the fact and the company, the management company refers you to their contractor list, and weeks later the tenant contacts you to say the work isn't done properly? I then had to call a reputable contractor to fix the problem. Also, tenant's oak kitchen cabinet door came off, and instead of contacting me about it, to burn incense on. Maybe that's why your figures are far apart. Many tenants today don't respect the apartment they live in. It works both ways. I would like to see an informational for tenants on their responsibility when renting. That's a really great point. So a lot of these sorts of things come down to communication, very upfront. When you think about the lease onboarding process, a lot of times tenants are given this very big, thick stack of papers, or they're sent a PDF document with 30, 40 or so pages. And in order to really understand the responsibilities that they're accountable for, we need to make sure that is front and center for them, and also reiterated. When it's in that big of a format, nobody likes to read. It's very difficult to get them to stay engaged in the process. So ensuring that you have some sort of, the infographic idea is great, an informational sort of bullet point. This is what you're responsible for. Would be also like a neat idea too. Maybe even have a QR code on like the front of any flyers, or when you send out an email at the very bottom, little QR code or a link. Hey, here's tenant responsibilities, or maybe not even frame it that way, because responsibilities is a heavy word. Maintenance suggestions, or how to clean your apartment, and has all the breakdowns. Reiterating what to do for maintenance requests and how to manage them, and if you have any complaints for them. And making another big part of this here is that open line of communication. So a lot of tenants don't necessarily know what is the best way to get in touch with my landlord. When I'm not sure, when they're not sure if their office is open, but they think it's an emergency, but according to the lease, it's not an emergency, that sort of thing. So having enough different channels, they can do it. Phone call, email, text message. Some people even use their Facebook Messenger line in order to have that sort of intake so they can reach someone. So those are just some of the ways I think that you could probably manage that, is keeping open lines of communications in multiple mediums, stating those expectations in as many different ways as possible, and framing it more like helpful tips rather than this is your responsibility, in order to get them excited and more likely to read those documents, and reiterating those types of things multiple times over the course of their lease. Those are the types of things that improve that. It's likely that everyone will go through a situation where you're going to have a nasty tenant who's not necessarily taking care of everything there. But there are some ways that you can communicate well enough that they understand those expectations, and you're able to help them through any sort of maintenance issues as well. I hope that helped.
All right. Yes,
Yep.
we got to thank you. Great. Anyone else? We'll give you a couple more seconds here. And by the way, this is great. This is what these are going to be like moving forward. We want to make them very interactive. As you can see, we have expert insights from Sneha, and we'll continue on. We have several coming up. We're going to be covering topics such as elevator safety, maintenance, and their life cycle. We're going to be talking about ways that you can communicate with other building owners for advice. So we have a series of Buildings New York Unlocked webinars coming up. So watch the schedule. So more questions. I think we may have an additional one here. Yep. So I think another one from John Marcos. Can you discuss the value of in-unit in-unit DW and WD in older units? So can you cover that, Sneha?
Yeah, are we referring to washer dryers just to make sure that we're using the same lexicon? John, you can type that in. I'm assuming we're going that way.
Yes.
All right, just making sure. I don't know if you're using some young hip slang that I don't know. So having an in-unit washer dryer has a tremendous effect, especially in city areas. There are a lot of older buildings that don't necessarily have that, but older buildings tend to do have the more attractive rent prices. So including a washer dryer in unit or retrofitting some of them in unit does immediately add value when you are able to increase your rents. Because comparatively, usually in the area, it's going to be a highlight standout amenity. While in some newer buildings, that's more considered a standard. And so it's not necessarily considered as competitive when you're comparing a whole block of new housing or compared to a whole block of older housing. But new housing, most likely all of them have in unit. The older housing, that's a good way to stand out and stay competitive. It also plays perfectly into the next topic, which is modernization, making sure that you're adding in some items that are modern and starting to move from that amenity space into that standard space where in 3-4 years, most tenants are going to be looking for these exact items when they're going on their search for new properties. Does that help, John? All right.
And it looks like we have more. This is great. So looks like something from Jerry. You want to just take that one, Stan?
Yeah. Yes, you haven't. So Jerry said, I sure appreciate my managing agent with my rentals. Yes, having someone there is absolutely great. It's a great way to make sure you always have that line of communication, and when you don't have the availability, someone else is there. So I'm happy you have that, Jerry.
And John wants to know about dishwashers.
Dishwashers are also fantastic. Also, they're super eco-friendly. So when we're moving towards sustainability and helping keep people's utility prices down, compared to washing your dishes, using your dishwasher actually saves a ton of water. So that's a really great value add. What I like about your questions, John, is it kind of plays into, I'm going to try to see if I can switch my slides back here. I don't know if I have it on here. It's one of the ways to communicate and use engagement is not only to talk about the fact that you have these great things, but how they help your tenant in the long run. So dishwashers help save on water. They also obviously save on time. In terms of hygiene, cleanliness, all of these are great things to have. Dishwashers are actually more so of a standard now. A lot of different buildings that are older have retrofitted to be able to add them in. But they, again, when you take a look at your competitive market, if that's something that helps you stand out, absolutely yes. You'll be able to drive up your rental income because you're able to charge more since you have that in that space.
All right. Did we question you all out, chat you all out? Anyone else? Great.
All righty, off we go. So as I mentioned, the next step here, the next priority is modernization. And really falls into energy efficiency and tech. Improving technology and features in your facility at this point in time is not only something that provides you savings from the management side, so helps your bottom line, but your tenants as well. A lot of these new technology pieces help so much on utility costs that it is a huge benefit to have them. I can tell you, I live in Sacramento, and some of this area is serviced by PG&E. Some of this area is serviced by the Sacramento Municipal Utility District called SMUD. SMUD, thankfully I'm in their district, has one of the biggest energy efficiency incentive programs in the country. So as long as I have some tools set up, I have a smart thermostat, I have got myself smart shades, I've got myself, we have an EV, all those sorts of things that are incentivized. And also helped by my landlord and my previous landlords, the property managers, saved about 50% of the bill for me. And that is such a huge, huge incentive, especially when you're thinking about young renters, people in their early 20s going into their early 30s. That's a huge deal. And then on the commercial side, that's a huge savings. If you have a smart HVAC system with sensors within it to help you with maintenance, that's a savings for you. If you have those sorts of smart thermostats installed in the building, then that's a saving for your tenant, because they can go ahead and regulate how the HVAC is used throughout the building, maybe install sensors within certain conference areas so it only runs in areas where there are people present. They can save a huge percentage on their utility bills, which helps their bottom line and also continues to help your bottom line. Internet of Things items like smart lights, smart switches, things like that, a great way to ensure that nothing's on when you don't need it to be on. Also great on labor costs as well. If you have an on-site team that runs maintenance or janitorial staff that is going through and turning everything off at the end of the day, save them that step. They should go ahead, finish their work, and at the same time every day, lights off, and then if they need to turn back on, you can also have a way for your team to be able to do that for you. The key questions related to modernization are: how do you communicate and market these changes to your tenants? So same sort of theme. We know what the amenities and modernization are two things that we know our tenants want, but how are you going to let them know about it? What mediums? Always attach a sort of additional benefit to what you're stating out there. You can say energy efficient HVAC, but why does that matter to them? They're going to save money on their utility bill. And what ways are you going to send that out? Email, text message, flyers, your online leasing site, encourage people to talk about it in reviews. There are so many different options. Prioritizing where the most eyeballs are key. And then how do you decide which investments take precedent? When we talk about that, it's pretty important to kind of take a look at lists like these. So what are the key priorities for your area? What stands out when we're looking at our market around us? Just like John mentioned to the group, if dishwashers are something is rare within your competitive market and can help you stand out at your price point, go for it. That's gonna be a huge differentiator. If you see most of the market around you transitioning to HVAC that includes those smart sensors, it may be time to go and take a closer look at that. Yeah, Lenny just jumped in as well. With the price of water in New York City, it'd be beneficial to install a water meter in apartments. Yes, absolutely. There are also smart sensors for that as well. You can get them installed so they're easier to read, and also can send that information over to people's apps, to their phones through an app, I should say. So really, when we talk about all three of these things as a recap, we're looking at amenities having some sort of extra features, services that set the tone to what you want your tenants to experience and feel within your space, and then also get a little bragging rights for engagement and service. How well do you respond to your tenants, and how easy is it for them to communicate with you? What mediums are you using in order to communicate with them? And modernization, energy efficiency, tech, providing some additional benefits that keep you competitive in the modern market. These are just some of the some items that Notifii can help with Notifii Connect, that we talked about a little bit more, and Notifii Track. Notifii Track is a package management and notification service. It's a low-cost amenity that's getting a lot of popularity to have that sort of inbound package management tool. It does provide some engagement and communications where you're able to send text messages and emails with these notifications, as well as receive responses. And also eliminates a lot of confusion by providing some modern technology around this. When we take a look at package management overall, we actually did a time study with one of our largest clients, PetSmart, and they found out for per package that came in, when they had people manually typing things in and shelving them, each package was taking them 6 minutes. You multiply that 6 minutes by 100 tenants, and you're wasting a whole lot of time. What our tool allows you to do is basically pull out your phone, take a quick picture, and it'll capture all the information off of the shipping label and save it to a record. You'll see here on the screen, there's this little checkbox area. You can also mark it off as some special instructions. And once you log the package in, it'll send an automatic notification at the interval of your choosing. So if you only want to send it once a day at the same time to everybody, you can do that with custom instructions too. So whatever they receive in their notification via email and text message is entirely up to you. And they can log packages out really simply by either looking up their name, looking up their unit number. We also support ID swipes, and then you can go ahead and log the package out. We also do support a kiosk mode where your team doesn't necessarily need to do the logout process, just the login, and your tenants can come up, type in their name, find their packages, scan them out, and you'll have a full record. And our record goes back 5 years. Now, with that being said, does anybody have any questions for me about either Track or Connect or any of the topics that we discussed today?
Feel free to join in. You did a super great job earlier, and we love the interactivity and the discussion. All right. Well, we'll give it another minute. Okay, and I think you have some information here for how people can notify you.
Yes, so feel free to shoot me an email at the email that you see on the screen, or visit notifii.com and hit that schedule a demo button to learn a little bit more about Notifii Track or Connect. If you have any questions about the content that we discussed here today, or would like to hear more from myself, feel free to email the email address you see above my head. Oh, it's opposite. Okay. Over there, and I'd be happy to help out.
Great. Well, Sneha, thank you so very, very much. And I want to thank everyone who joined us today for this first Buildings New York Unlocked webinar. please go to buildingsnewyork.com because our registration is open and we want to invite you to join us September 14th and 15th at Pier 36 for the annual gathering of building owners, property managers, facility leaders, and really our great community as we get together to source, learn, and show how to lower the cost of operating buildings, take out the complexity, and join and meet with each other at Buildings New York 2022, September 14th and 15th, Pier 36. Go to buildingsny.com. Sneha, thank you so very, very much. Everybody who joined us today, thank you. This is being recorded so that we'll be able to put this on demand for your colleagues who couldn't join us. Have a great day, and thank you from Buildings New York.
Thank you, everyone.